How different is the Bearcats offense this year as Ben Bryant continues to impress game after game? Plus, why this game Saturday versus Indiana could be the Bearcats' bread and butter kind of game.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we thank you very much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. We are free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel and follow us too every time. Follow us to get an alert every time we drop a new episode, which today's episode, if I can pull up the ad schedule, today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Let me get the overlay up here. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. What this episode is also brought to you by is The Godfather. Now, what's The Godfather? Well, let me and Russ explain. The Godfather, well, I had it for a minute, and now I don't. Russ is smiling because he knows what it is. So if you've ever been to Skyline Chili, Dante Corleone, Bearcats defensive tackle, has invented The Godfather. What it is 7 Cholitos with French fries in them with string cheese. Then on the side, it's a large 3-way with some chili cheese fries. Russ, I hope there's someday when you and I are in such great shape that we can afford to have those.
That is quite the order, Alex. And thanks once again for having me on Locked On Bearcats. Good to be back with y'all. It was striking. Juwan Briggs was actually asked. It was funny. The media had a good back and forth with him at the end of yesterday's media availability after Luke Fickell's press conference. And he said, I'm a Gold Star guy, but I don't know who's letting him eat like that. I'm glad we got him. He said, I'm glad we got him back down to closer to 300 pounds than the 350 he came into UC at. But the Godfather, I saw Justin. I think it's a great marketing ploy and NIL, great opportunity. But if they add that as an NIL option for Dante Corleone, Alex, what human being would actually be able to order that and finish it? I feel like they would have to make it like a Skyline Man versus Food challenge or something like that.
Yeah, there was I'd have to go back and find this in Sports Illustrated, but I remember in the 2012 NFL preview issue, there was this thing called the Lambeau Heap, which is like this pound burger and French fries and cheese curds. So, I mean, and they said if you ate the whole thing, you would get it for free. But this, I mean, first off, like a Cholito, I've never had the Cholito because I usually get a 3-way. But seven?
That's like 3 meals for me. 7 Cholitos. I mean, and you gotta feel. I don't know how does your body not just collapse? How do you not go to sleep after eating that?
Well, I guess
defensive linemen, they are not built like you and I, Alex.
No, I guess after getting hit by offensive linemen really hard for 3 hours, I guess you need that. I don't know if that's to boost your pride or I don't even know. Okay, let's get to the main point of this show. We're going to talk about a lot of things, why this offense is different, Ben Bryant's development. We're going to talk about how the Bearcats are holding up in light of some key injuries and look ahead to this Saturday's game versus Indiana. There was a stat I saw Sunday, Russ, you and I were talking earlier this week. We think it's going to be a bread and butter game for Cincinnati. Very first question, though, I have for you is why is this offense different than last year's and in years past?
Well, you have a really veteran offensive line unit. You have question marks at the running back position. Don't have a defined bell cow there yet, even as we get to the final game of the non-conference. You have a prototypical passing quarterback that has an NFL-level arm, not a wow you arm, but an arm that is capable of making all the NFL throws you need, and a deep receiving core, even when they did lose Will Pauling to that MCL injury for the next few weeks. It allows guys like Nick Martin or Chris Scott to get more run out there. Jadon Thompson, who would likely wants to keep a better handle on the football a little bit this week, but he's getting some great run. And then obviously you get over 100 yards from Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker, who used to be burners. Now they're all around great talents at the wide receiver position. You and I just got done rewatching that game today. They were wide open throughout that entire game. Miami had no idea what to do with their zone defense against that wide receiving duo. And it's the big reason why they are the first duo in the Luke Fickell era to go over 100 yards in one game.
Yeah, that's something that you and I both noticed while rewatching the game. Justin wrote about this too in The Athletic, how they were lining up the receivers in various spots. I mean, at some points you had Josh Wiley in the slot. So this is an offense that is much different in terms of what they're doing, to move the ball down the field. I noted too that you're not seeing throws down the middle of the field all the time. You're seeing the perimeter worked, and particularly Nick Mardner, who has 2 touchdowns now on the season. Russ, his size, his height, that is a huge weapon for this offense. I remember the touchdown before halftime. Russ, do you realize on that drive, there was a catch he made on the near sideline? Ben Bryant threw that ball in the only place where he could get it. And that was, right on his hands, up high, angling towards the sideline. We haven't really seen that from a Bearcats offense. But this all goes back to Ben Bryant, Russ. Played his best game on Saturday, no question. The interception, I won't even hold against him. That was a tip ball. That should have been caught. What's impressed you the most about Ben Bryant, particularly over the last 10 quarters, the second half at Arkansas, through the game against Miami?
I think his ability to spread the wealth and really work through his progressions on each and every passing rep. To me, there was maybe 1 or 2 instances in that game where I think he probably should have tried to throw it towards the sticks on 1 or 2 more third downs instead of throwing it short 2 or 3 yards and letting the yak opportunity come. And they ultimately didn't end up getting those first downs. But other than that, I felt like Ben Bryant made the right read on almost every single play. And to me, it's the accuracy, the poise, and the pocket presence are all molding, coalescing into one great package that we saw on display against Miami. When you look at the raw numbers right now, he's one of the best passers in the country, top 25 in completion percentage, 70.1%, touchdown passes at 23rd overall with 7 touchdowns, 287.7 pass yards per game. That's 21st in the country, and has thrown just 2 interceptions. To me, the biggest thing that I want to see him keep improving on in terms of just raw quarterbacking out there, that I think is the last kind of facet of the equation, is creating more opportunities when you are pressured, getting out of those sack opportunities a little bit better. I think you can agree with me, Alex, that he wasn't pressured often on Saturday, but the pressure is basically half the time, and my gauge, half the time he was pressured, I would put it right around 7 or 8 pressures total. He was sacked, took 3 sacks in the game. If he can show a little bit more shiftiness with the feet in the face of pressure while his receivers keep getting open downfield in those plays, then he should be the full package, and has pretty much been the full package passing wise for the Bearcats. They have not seen this level of passing output in the Luke Fickell era.
No, and that's something that I have been really happy about this season, because you go back to 2019. I mean, this team was averaging less than 200 yards passing per game. That's not, Justin pointed this out. The fact that they went to the American Championship game and won 11 games with that offense is really impressive. And I think about the offensive line. They lose Jake Renfro the week before the season starts. And yet, Russ, I've watched 3 games, and I still see an offensive line that looks really good. How good do you think it can be this season, and what have you seen through the first 3 games?
I think they're not that they're peaking. I think they're plateauing at one of the better levels you want to plateau at as an offensive line unit. I think they've really coalesced and gelled in these past 3 games under Gavin Gerhardt. He's done a great job filling in for Jake Renfro. Obviously, you never want to lose a talent, a leader, and just a player of that caliber in a guy like Jake Renfro. But it just goes to show the depth and the coachability that all these players have, and the coaching acumen that all the members of this staff have to get that together as quickly as it has. And I noticed it throughout the game on Saturday. Like I mentioned, really just, I would say there were less than 10 full-on pressures in the game from Miami's front 4, and 3 to 4 of those were, I would say, kind of coverage pressures. So to me, in terms of blown blocks, blown assignments. You and I have seen that on Sundays all the past 2 weeks. It is crazy, the night and day difference watching this UC offensive line, the way they communicate, the way they've come together, and watching that Bengals offensive line that we don't even need to get into right now. But I asked Ben Bryant about it to kind of bring this all together after the game, and he said, it feels like we're playing 7-on-7. That's what it felt like for most of this game, that I was able to just play pitch and catch out there, get the all four of my reads. And for the most part, Alex, this offensive line is giving Ben Bryant at least 3 seconds to pass on every single passing down.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, for a new quarterback and for a new running back room to have that offensive line working in front of them and it is really helping this team come along. Speaking of running backs, there's one player that we were hoping to see a lot of this season. We really haven't seen a lot from him yet. We'll get into that in segment 2. And then, of course, later on, we'll get into this Saturday's game against Indiana. The Bearcats are huge favorites, and they should be. We'll get into it after a word from Nugenics. So, feeling like you just can't get in shape. It's not your fault. Maybe you have the Godfather, and that's why you feel like you can't. As men age, our body naturally loses free testosterone, the quote-unquote man hormone. It happens to every man and can make it more difficult to stay in shape and be energetic and active. Remember when winning felt easy? That's because when you were younger, you were at the peak of your testosterone production. Well, some have called the winner's hormone or the man hormone. Wouldn't it be nice to get that winner's edge again and that old swagger back in your step? You want more energy to counter the negative physical effects of aging. Nugenics Total T Testosterone Booster with Testofen will help you turn back the clock, re-energize your workouts, get you better results at the gym, and help you look and feel like the man you really want to be. Nugenics Total T contains man-boosting ingredients, key ingredients like Testofen. It has been validated in 5 clinical studies, shown to boost free testosterone levels in men. Because Nugenics Total T boosts free testosterone that the aging process robs, you'll feel stronger, leaner, with more energy and drive and more passion too, and your partner will notice the difference. While every product professes quality, many other products use generic ingredients that are often far less than clinical grade. With Nugenics Total T, you get the same clinical potency levels used in the trials, and Nugenics' formulation is backed by 10 years of science and research. Now, get a complimentary bottle of Nugenics Total T when you text COLLEGE to 231231. Text now and get a bottle of Nugenics Thermo, their most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get back into shape fast, absolutely free. Text COLLEGE to 231231. That's text COLLEGE, COLLEGE, to 231231. Message and data rates may apply. Terms apply. Available at nugenics.com/terms. All right, now that I got that off my chest, I feel weird as a 23-year-old reading that ad, but shout out to Nugenics, new sponsor on the Locked On Podcast Network College channel. All right, here's what I want to know, Russ. And I was on Twitter after the game, and people are commenting on it. Where's Corey Kiner?
So Coach Fickell addressed this yesterday. Apparently he didn't go into specific full-on details, but he got dinged up a little bit mid-game, got cleared. Kiner said he was able to come back, told Coach that he was ready to play, and then it just kind of went by the wayside. Fickell described it as, not being as familiar with Corey Kiner. He wanted to play it a little safe, not get him back in the game and risk re-injury in a contest that at that point when he was trying to come back in was already a double-digit affair in favor of the Bearcats. So I think we will see a lot more of him this weekend, as long as that injury is not lingering around. He did not indicate, Coach Fickell did, that it would keep him out of the game this weekend. So we should see more of him. And to me, 33 total carries so far this season for Charles McClelland, 7 more than Corey Kiner, who is sitting at 26, and then Miles Montgomery sitting there at 10 carries. I believe he only had 2 touches in that game against Miami. Miles Montgomery did. So with the lack of Ryan Montgomery, you would have expected kind of those guys to get a little bit more run, but the passing game is working really, really well. 97 attempts so far this year. They're in the top half of the nation in terms of total pass attempts. And when the passing game is working and you're averaging 9.8 or you're averaging 8.9 yards per Ben Bryant throw, there's not that much need to establish the run, quote unquote.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's also working, Russ, and it's great to see him healthy. Charles McClelland. may have played the best game of his career on Saturday. 18 carries, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's really running well, whether it's between the tackles, whether it's outside. He had a 32-yard run to kind of get the Bearcats going early. He's really finally looking healthy. He's playing the best ball of his career, and if he can just stay healthy, this offense has otherworldly potential.
I agree. The biggest issue he's got is holding on to that football. 2 hands through the hole, Chuck. 2 hands through the hole. That should be plastered on his locker all week long. Until you get to that third level of the defense, keep that thing tightened up. If you would have done that, it would have been basically an A-plus game out of Charles McClelland. He was fantastic on Saturday, hit the hole hard. He showed great burst out of the backfield. You and I were touching on, actually, well, you retweeted my tweet today talking about the run game and the ability to punish people that guys like Leonard Taylor and Josh Wiley bring to the table. As soon as Charles McClelland knew that he had one of those guys in front of him, it seemed like he accelerated to me. He just started speeding up. Josh Wiley would pound the guy right in front of him, open up that gap, and Charles McClelland would sneak right through there. He's very slight. He's very skinny, can get really narrow in between some of those tooth gap wide type of holes that can oftentimes spring huge plays. And one of them did spring that long 30, was it like a 30-yard touchdown run to close the first half? That was a huge, or not close the first half, to close the third quarter. And that was a huge development for the Bearcats.
Talking with Russ Heltman, my colleague at AllBearcats. You can follow him on Twitter. I always forget. I should know by now. You're off the top of my head, your Twitter name. Jeez. I should know yours.
Russ Heltman
AJ.
11. It's not too
I knew it was going to be that. At Russ Heltman 11. Always remember the number 11. I don't know what it is about the number 11. Anyway, first game without Malik Vann. Didn't really see any glaring issues, Russ. In fact, I thought that, here's the thing about Saturday's game. So we knew Miami's strength on offense, Russ, was running the ball, right?
Right.
And the Cincinnati Bearcats held them to less than 100 yards. Without
1.9 yards per carry on the afternoon. Some would say that's pretty good.
1.9.
Yeah.
Sources do say that's pretty good. if your Ohio University and my University of Cincinnati math is doing us correctly, then yes, that would be good. So I thought Ivan Pace had an outstanding game. I thought Deshaun Pace had an outstanding game. Just what do you see with this defense without Malik Vann? Is it still as good? I thought Jawan Briggs stepped up in a big way.
I think it's just as good. A guy that I think probably could have made it, and like I said, it was a B plus day from Charles McClelland given the turnovers, and Eric Phillips had a B plus day that could have been a sub 10-point performance total out of this defense if he had played and made all the plays he was capable of making in that game. Had a couple penalties here and there, dropped an interception late in the game that wouldn't have had a huge impact on the outcome, but would have been nice for his statistical profile. And to me, he's one of those players that is stepping up. Noah Potter stepped up in this game, had a great tackle for loss. I don't know if they counted that as a sack, but it was a great play to shut down and a snap over the head of Avion Smith from the Red Hawks. Noah Potter's getting in well. Eric Phillips, I just mentioned, Justin Watley, Ryan Mullaney also stepping in there as well. So all these guys, I think, are getting valuable reps. They're getting great reps, and they're really if you're Malik Vann, I know there's all the players say that I just want the next guy up to be the best they can be. I just want the team to win, but everybody has a little ego. Everybody deep down wants to see their backup play a little bit worse than they think they would play. But that isn't happening with the Bearcats right now. That is not happening. The backups are stepping in beautifully. And Malik Vann, who I hope can, knock on wood, recover very quickly, maybe have an outside chance to come back at the end of the year, although with a torn pec, that is wildly, wildly unrealistic, and possibly come back to be the head honcho, the main man in this room next year with all those guys behind them that have gained valuable experience. To me, I think it's been really no drop off at all. Now, there hasn't been a really high level of comp to test that drop off, considering I don't think they've played outside of Arkansas a team in the top 60 of the S&P Plus rankings since week one.
Here's something else Malik Vann should do. Get with TJ Watt and see what he's doing, because now TJ Watt might only be out for 6 weeks. That's bad news for the Bengals. They play the Steelers week 11 mid-November. So just maybe Malik Vann comes back. Speaking of which, Saturday, a huge game. We're just 2 days away, just over 48 hours. It's a game against the Indiana Hoosiers. Russ, the Bearcats beat Indiana last year. We'll get into that game. And one glaring stat that stood out to me from the Hoosiers, it should make this game a bread and butter game for Cincinnati. I got you going a little bit. We'll get into it after a word from, as I get the overlay and the live read. I do a lot of stuff with these live reads. All right. After this word from BetOnline, you see betonline.net is your number one source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports this season. You can find all of the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's game. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. I apologize for that. I hit the wrong button there. All right, Russ Heltman joining me here on Locked On Bearcats, my colleague at AllBearcats and Sports Illustrated. The Bearcats are getting set to take on the Indiana Hoosiers on Saturday from Nippert Stadium. It's a 3:30 kick. It's a game that you can see on ESPN2. It's also a game, of course, you can listen to live locally on 102.7 WEBN and 700 WLW. So Indiana, Russ, there's one area where I would be gravely concerned if I'm an Indiana fan or associated with the program in any way. Indiana, through 3 games, has allowed 186 yards rushing per game. And they've also allowed 255 yards. No. They've also allowed 255 yards passing per game. Your thoughts on what should be, as you said to me, a throttling on Saturday?
Bill Connolly over at ESPN does the S&P Plus rankings, and he actually did a ranking this week of all 33 undefeated FBS teams, and the 32nd ranked team would be the Indiana Hoosiers, who are wildly lucky to be 3-0 right now, Alex. When you look at their schedule so far this season, the Indiana Hoosiers have faced Illinois, Idaho, and Western Kentucky. None of those teams are in the top 70 of S&P Plus. Idaho is not in the FBS. They are an FC school who they beat 35-22 in week 2. Against Illinois, they held a less than 33% chance post-game win probability of winning that game. Post-game win probability factoring in time of possession, field position, turnovers, all the factors in a game, and they kind of, at the end of the game, regardless of who won or who lost, tell you how likely said team was to win, even if they did win, which they did against Illinois, 31%. 11% post-game win probability against Western Kentucky, who they just beat 33-30, Conference USA opponent this past weekend. Tom Allen's crew is wildly lucky to be 3-0 right now. They are, I think, ranked 82nd or 81st in S&P Plus. They have a high-flying offense, high-flying, so to speak, in that they throw the ball high and they fly it a lot, but it doesn't go very far. Connor Bazelak is solid, but he's not going to wow you right now. I mentioned Ben Bryant's 8.9 yards per attempt, highly efficient figure. Connor Bazelak, 6.6 yards per attempt on 136 passes so far this year. I believe that ranks 5th in the country in total overall pass attempts in 2022. Sean Shivers and Cam Camper, not Cam Camper, Bazelak a transfer. So is Sean Shivers. Both those guys coming over from bigger programs to help Indiana out this year and fill those spots as kind of plug-and-play guys. But to me, this should be an absolute throttle by the Bearcats. 16.5-point favorites. It's time to cover a spread. It is time to cover a spread. Like last week, you get off to the 17-10 start, or excuse me, 17-7 start, 10-0 at one point. The slow starts have to go away. Maybe they could start to go away with your energy coming from this Nippert Stadium crowd. This should be the best crowd we've had so far this season, goes without saying, considering they faced Kennesaw State last week. And to me, like this via BearcatJournal.com, Indiana defense is ranked 93rd nationally in plays of 10 yards or more, and 106th in giving up plays of 20 yards or more. The big bombs to Tyler Scott, the big bomb to Trey Tucker, the deep seam route to Josh Wiley or Leonard Taylor, all of those are on the table this coming weekend. And I think it's time to make a statement going into the AAC schedule, hovering right around 31 to 27 in the AP and coaches poll over the past couple weeks since the loss to Arkansas. Make a statement, make enough to get back in that AP top 25 ranking, put an AAC team in there heading into the conference slate, and make it well known who is the prohibitive favorite in the conference to take home a third straight championship.
Okay, so the Bearcats beat Indiana last year 38-24. That Indiana team came into last year with high expectations. They were number 17 in the AP top 25 to start the season. Then they get their doors blown off by Iowa week 1. They beat Idaho week 2. Then the Bearcats come in. It's 14-0 Indiana in the first half. Bearcats are playing like absolute garbage. And Luke Fickell said this yesterday. Russ, you were there. He called it the worst 28 minutes of football they played last season. But the next 32 might have been the best. They come back, win the game by 14 points. They force 4 turnovers. Desmond Ridder throws for over 300 yards. I think it was pretty close to it. And a touchdown. Jerome Ford had 2 touchdowns rushing. Deshaun Pace had a key interception. Darian Beavers, had a huge forced fumble and, fumble recovery. So my thing is this. Now you get Indiana at home. And here's another thing I've been thinking about. Houston just lost to Kansas, right?
Yep.
UCF lost to Louisville. Is there any legitimate challenger to the Bearcats in the American right now?
I went into the season not really thinking there was, to be quite honest. The only game I had them losing in my season-long projections was that back end of that double road date schedule against SMU and UCF in the late part of October. But I really don't think so, Alex. At this point, from what we've seen out of this reloaded Bearcats roster and what we've seen against much lower competition, I would say that the AC has played compared to UC facing Arkansas and barely losing a game that they post-game win probability, I would say, was closer to 50-50 than people might realize because of all the mistakes that were self-inflicted by UC. Right now, if UC doesn't beat themselves, i.e. 3-1 turnover ratio last week that allowed Miami to get out to a 10-point lead late in the second quarter, then there's no competition to me. There is no argument that UC should be the prohibitive American Athletic Conference favorite.
Cincinnati outscored Indiana last year 38-10 over the final 32 minutes of that game in Bloomington, Indiana last year. I was at that game. Let me ask you this question, and we're obviously going to write about this on All Bearcats. We'll do our game preview, score prediction, but key to the game and your score prediction for Saturday.
To me, it's this Indiana receiving duo. Can they keep the duo of Cam Camper and DJ Matthews from making 2 or 3 huge explosive plays like we know Luke Fickell hates giving up? 38 total catches from this crew, 493 total yards of receiving from Camper and Matthews. That's out of 891 total on the season from the IU team. 77 total receptions. They have 38 of them. This is the entire pass-catching offense is Cam Camper and DJ Matthews Jr. If you can make a guy like Josh Henderson have to catch more balls out of the backfield, Sean Shivers, more receptions out of the backfield, make them turn to A.J. Barner, their tight end, or their third receiver, Emory Simmons, it's going to do this Bearcats defense a lot of favors in terms of being able to control the pace of the game, control this passing attack, and control the big play ability. 3 of their 5 touchdowns also come by way of Cam Camper and DJ Matthews Jr., who will be lined up in the slot a lot, and the slot has been the best strength of the Bearcats defense so far. Sammy Anderson Jr. and Taj Ward, the 2 highest-graded Bearcats on the season so far, although Luke Fickell did mention yesterday that they haven't been tested a whole lot. A guy who did get tested last week, and I'm expecting to play much better, much more like the second half and final kind of 45-ish minutes of play than the first 15 minutes of play, is Arquan Bush. Got beat by Mac Hippenhammer on that deep touchdown down the left sideline in the opening drive of the game. Didn't get his head turned around, but had the exact same play happen on the opposite side of the field, the opposite sideline. Got his head turned around this time, picks the ball off from Avion Smith to get his first interception of the season, and I believe his 9th in his career. So Arquan Bush, a player to watch, and those corners are players to watch for me when you're talking about a passing attack that has attempted the 5th most passes in the country this season.
Do you have a score prediction yet for this game on Saturday?
I'm going to roll 45-20 Bearcats. The offense gets no resistance from this Indiana defense. They light them up. I could see 4 to 5 touchdown passes from Ben Bryant and another 300-yard day for a passer that is just starting to rack them up. Something Bearcat fans and Bearcat media, us watching it, not used to covering.
And there's now a deep receiving core to go along with it. So I'm going to ask you, because you said last week that the 2 most frustrating losses that you've seen from the Bengals were the previous 2 games. Okay, where does Sunday's game against Dallas rank?
On week 1, Alex, I was just getting really mad and just broken down. And then week 2, I was already broken. It just felt like I was just expecting the worst as soon as they come out flat on this first few offensive drives. And to me, it's just like Trent Dilfer put this perfectly on the Ryan Russillo podcast earlier this week. Aaron Rodgers is not asked to be Aaron Rodgers 40 times a game. He's asked to be Aaron Rodgers, especially in this Matt LaFleur offense, 15, maybe 20 times a game. What do I mean be Aaron Rodgers? I mean, has to drop back, evaluate what he's seeing over 3 seconds, make the right read, and make the right pass. That doesn't happen all the time for great offenses. Great offenses set their quarterbacks and their playmakers up with easy completions, easy eat your vegetables style plays. And right now, those are the most absent things from this Bengals game plan that I can see in this Bengals offensive execution. And really the bottom line, 3 a.m. Coney host Lucas Moore and I were talking about this yesterday. It just comes back to the running game. If they can't run the football, if they continue to be dead last in rushing success rate in the NFL, nothing will get turned around. You signed all these players. They all had great run blocking backgrounds. Frank Pollock, the offensive line coach, has a great run game building background. It's time to put it on display. It's time to put up or shut up. And it's time for Joe Mixon, cough, cough, 42nd out of 48 in elusive rating right now, out of 48 qualified running backs, to play better as well. The whole offensive unit has to play better, but especially that line, especially that running back, because these teams will continue to play the revolutionary Tampa 2 defense, which came out when Alex and I were negative 10 years old. It's been around for almost 40 years. They're going to continue to do that revolutionary defense until you can run the football a little bit. Look at the Bearcats. They don't blow people out of the water with their rushing attack. It was right around 4 yards per carry on Saturday. But you know what that allowed them to do? Throw the ball for 9.5 yards per attempt. It's not rocket science. It's not.
It's why defenses are so focused on stopping the run first. I wonder where that came from. By the way, Joe Burrow said yesterday, let's all take a deep breath and relax. We're going to be fine. Well, hopefully he's right.
And the glass half full, Alex, last thing I'll say about the Bengals, the debate has been had all through the last week. Well, Dalvin Cook doesn't fumble that football in week 1 last year. Bengals are 0-2 in the same exact scenario. And that is exactly right. But the difference being, the Bengals made the playoffs last year by 1 game. 10-7 made it. The 0-2 Indianapolis Colts finished 9-8 with a 95+% playoff probability marker in week 18. They fall to 9-8 instead of getting the 10-7 against the Jaguars. They missed the playoffs. So now, obviously, they're not eliminated. They're 1 game back in the division. But you and I both know the margin for error is basically non-existent moving forward.
Yeah, there is no margin for error. All right, let's not spin our wheels too much on that. Russ Heltman from AllBearcats and Sports Illustrated. You can follow him on Twitter at RussHeltman11, my colleague, and a weekly conversation that we have now on Locked On Bearcats about the Bearcats. They're 2-1. They face Indiana on Saturday. Russ, I imagine you're going to be at the game on Saturday covering it for All-Bearcats?
Yes, I will. 3:30 p.m. kick. Just 6 days before the kickoff, we got it nailed down. 3:30. Something these college kickoffs, man. They want to take it right down to the midnight oil. It is.
Yeah, and then we got a late night next week for the first conference game of the season against Tulsa. 7 p.m. kicks. That'll be a late night for all of us. But anyway, Russ Heltman joining me from All Bearcats, my colleague in Sports Illustrated. Russ, good to have you as always.
Yes, sir. Excited to do it again soon.
Absolutely. As for me, you can follow me on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's and an ATI. You can follow me on Instagram too, AlexFrank9_, or email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For your second listen, get more on the Big 12 by making Locked On Big 12 your second listen. Everyday host Josh Neighbors and the local experts of Locked On take you across the conference in 30 minutes. Locked On Big 12, your second listen. That's Locked On Big 12. For Locked On Bearcats, my name is Alex Frank. I'll be back tomorrow with my game preview, keys to the game, matchups to watch, where this game will be decided, and, of course, my score prediction, of course, my thoughts on the game as well. Interesting game we have coming up Saturday, Bearcats in Indiana. For Locked On Bearcats, I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.